Today's episode is brought to you by Firmtech.
Anthony, man, it's always a pleasure to chat with you and chat with fellow veterans, but also to touch on a subject that I'm really interested in and you have a lot of experience in. So today, folks, we're going to be talking about testosterone, big old T. And Anthony's got a lot of insights, and he's actually doing something that I find super interesting. He's actually coming off testosterone. So Anthony, it's a real pleasure to have you back on. It's been a hot minute, man. Like I think last time we chatted on the show was literally 2 years ago. Yeah, it was like just under 2 years ago at MEC, the Military Influencer Conference, on your show, and then we did one on my show. So let's just start with like, dude, how are you, man? It's been a while.
Man,
Before we get started, I have to ask you one thing, and that is subscribe. 80% of you guys that are watching haven't hit the subscribe button. I know you're not freeloaders, so I know that you're going to take the opportunity and go hit that subscribe button, because this is how we build a stronger, healthier, harder to kill veteran community. And this is how the algorithm actually understands that you're paying attention. So I'd really appreciate it if you take the 15 seconds to go find the subscribe button, hit it, hit the bell notification, make sure to like the video so that we can get more visibility on what we're talking about here, so that we can get higher quality guests, and so that I can fulfill my promise to you, which is to deliver the highest quality content possible. All right, you know what you got to do? Let's get back to the show.
thank you. I first off, I appreciate being here. You have a fantastic platform, and it's so generous of you to allow me to be able to take some of your time. But man, I've been doing good. Life has changed a lot for me in the last 2 years. So we kind of abruptly shut down our podcast that we had going on with the Stone Apes podcast. I think that got a lot of people a little confused, but I just had a lot of major life events and things changing at that time in my life. I was a business owner with multiple businesses, and ended up having the corporation, because I was a franchise owner, had made a bid to buy my franchise, which was kind of unheard of. That doesn't happen. And I was taken really off guard by it. And next thing you know, I'm retired at 42. And it was like, shit, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And I was sitting outside, and I was enjoying a smoke with my wife, and she was like, I think I want to take a year off and figure out like what it is that we want to do with life. And I was a little taken back by that, because at the time I'd already figured out what I wanted to do with my life. We had a successful show, life was steamrolling along, and I had all these things that I was really set in place to do. And I thought, well, yeah, I really don't want to take a year off right now. But like any good husband, I took some consideration of my wife's words and decided to do some exploration with myself. And I discovered that a little bit of time off, after working 50, 60 hours a week and being so engaged in the business world for as long as I was, it was time to kind of figure out like, what is it that Anthony wants out of life? And so I took the last year and a half, and I've been kind of traveling the globe, so to speak, and discovering what it is that I wanted to do with my life, and made some pretty big moves. And voila, here I am. So back on the mic with you.
Man. So I'm going to lean on you in a little bit here. You're 42?
Yes, sir. I'm 44 now. Yeah,
Okay,
I've been retired for 2 years.
Got it. So we're roughly the same age. I'll be 44 in a month. And I'm in the same boat too. I say I'm retired kind of tongue in cheek, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but effectively I am. And it's only kind of recently. And dude, I'm lost in the sauce, man. I don't know like what it is. I'm doing this. This is thoroughly enjoyable, but I'm wrestling with is this what I'm doing for the next 20 years? Like, is it just this? Because there's this lingering feeling like I could be doing more. There's that negative voice in the back of my head. It's like, you're just doing a podcast? That's all you're going to do? You're just going to write books? Is that all you're really going to do? And it's nagging at me. And I don't quite know how to navigate this. So if you can give me your best words of wisdom.
Oh,
what
shit.
do you think? What do you guide me, sir? What are some words of wisdom for me?
Yeah, no, I'm actually glad to dive into this if you want. I don't want to take up too much of your listeners' time going off track, but this was a very personal, very deep moment in my life. And the last year and a half of my life has actually been some of the hardest moments of my life, which you wouldn't think that way. And I think for your listeners, I really need to kind of shape the purview of what it is that my life looked like. I was a business owner for over 20 years, and I ended up getting my MBA through Lindenwood University, and I started teaching at college. And so I always kind of effectively had two jobs. I started that back in 2016, but back in 2012, I was running a tax and financial company, and so it made sense to branch out into business consultation. When I got my MBA, I did that. And then later, when I went on to my PhD, further started to specialize in business consultation. And so from there, ended up owning actually several businesses. I started the podcast, and then as some of your listeners may know, if they've heard my show or if they've heard me before, I also had a Muay Thai business, which was kind of completely unrelated, but physical fitness is still a part of your life, right? And so I'd been doing Muay Thai for over 20 years of my life. So I was running a Muay Thai program at a 10th Planet, Crystal City, with Eric Longer down there, and it was great. I really was enjoying that. And then I had an ownership share in about three other businesses. I owned a small percentage of a few tattoo companies, and then I also had a majority share in an apparel company. And then, as you know, I had the podcast, and the podcast blew up. That really changed my life. Within the year that I started the show, getting linked into the Grunt Style Foundation really catapulted my life in a completely different direction. And, then I ended up discovering plant medicine, and I found my own path to healing and all these things that were occurring. So when I sold my professional life off, I was still very steeped into the podcast life. And my goal with the podcast, tongue in cheek, we had the Stoned Apes podcast. So it was all about personal growth, development. A lot of people hear the word stone and they think, oh man, these guys are immediately talking about weed. Well, yeah, we got high every time, but we definitely had some different stuff going on there. And but we really were, the Stoned Ape theory is about how ancient man supposedly fell in line with some of these psilocybin and other types of psychedelics. And as we know that they're very powerful neurogenics, so they expanded consciousness, and voila, we have the humans that we have today. That's the 30,000-foot overview of the theory, and that's what the podcast was based on. So I was coming out of this moment of my life with this great transition, really at the precipice of like just beginning to kind of wake up to like who I am and what myself is. And I had a real identity crisis that I was already working on for about 5 years. And after spending 20 years of your life in a mode of work, we define ourselves here in America by what it is that you do for a living. It's like,
Yeah, of
well, I
course.
was a
That's like
business owner.
question number two when you like meet somebody. It's like, oh, cool. What's your name? Cool. Yeah. So what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Probably been my least favorite question. And I avoid answering that most times. I try not to tell people like who I am or where I come from or what I do, because it's like, that isn't who I am. Like, if you want to know me, you need to get to know me. Like, what are my interests? What are my hobbies? What are the things that I'm passionate about? And it's not what I do for a living. I mean, I'm good at a lot of things. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm passionate about them. And, sitting down and rolling over accounting numbers and things like that, of course I can do that. But I'm not going to sit there and be excited to go to work and do that for 40, 50 hours a week. And so there was a lot of like trying to discover who it was that I am, because it was such a polarizing thing coming out of the military. I came out of the military as a combat engineer, so I was already combat arms. As kind of a rough and tumble guy to begin with, and always kind of have been, gravitated to Muay Thai and all that. And then I've been a hunter and all these other things. But then on the other side of my life, I'm an accountant, and I go to work and I wear a suit and a tie and I sit in a chair 10 hours a day. And
you're like the coolest accountant I've ever met in my life. Like, you don't fit an accountant mold. Will and like, we're like, oh yeah, he's an accountant. I'm like, what? You meant like there's a different type of accounting that I'm just not aware of, right? Like, this doesn't make any sense, because all the accountants I know, my accountant, they're not doing Muay Thai. Just that alone, it's like they're not doing that. So it's an interesting fit.
My new book, Harden to Fuck Up, was written as a guide for anybody that follows the podcast and wants to put together all the things that they've learned from amazing guests. It is Dallas Alexander approved. Tim Jensen from Grunt Style wrote the foreword. And if you want to lose weight, you want to get a grip of your health, your waistline, and your mental health this year, I strongly recommend going to Amazon and getting your ebook, audiobook, or paperback copy immediately. Would love to hear a review, and train hard, fight easy. Let's get back to the episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Firmtech. Firmtech is the creator of the Firmtech Tech Ring. Yeah, fellas, this is a cock ring, and I guess that officially makes me a cock ring salesman. But let me tell you, you're not watching this show for standard run-of-the-mill health advice. You're looking for that next level, hard to kill advice. And I have to tell you, this bad boy here is going to give you real-time data that's going to literally save your life. Let me demonstrate how to actually apply this thing. I'm just kidding. You know what? If you guys don't like, subscribe, and actually share and get a few of these, I might have to resort to that kind of stuff on the internet later, but that's neither here nor there. If you want to know how all the protocols that you're starting to implement from this show are affecting your health, knowing how many boners you get at night is a real-time way that you can get delivered to your phone with this device that will actually give you the data to show your doctor and be in the know as to whether or not you have good coronary heart health function and if you have ED. And if you do, man, welcome to the club. 40% of us, and even more, I would say, in the veteran community have ED, and that goes up by 10% every decade with age. First things first, go get yourself one of these bad boys. Make sure you strap it on, get the data on your phone. Then if you notice that there's a problem, go see your doc and be like, doc, man, this isn't working, man. All the pills, all the other stuff that we're doing just isn't getting me the results that I want, and I'm really concerned about my heart health. So if you guys want to get your first device with a 15% discount, thanks to Firmtech being a sponsor of the show, then head to the link that's in the description right here and get your first device and start tracking, start hacking, and start being harder to kill. Let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, well, but that created this polarization in my life because I go to work and, I'd wear a mask. And I go to work and I'd wear a mask, and I'd go to one job and I'd wear another mask, and I go to another job, there for a while. I was teaching at a university, Missouri Baptist University, and no ill will or anything toward them. But at that particular moment in my life, I was no longer a Christian. I was an ex-ordained minister and had really lost my faith. And here I am teaching at a faith-based school. Well, I know how to wear that mask really well, but that doesn't authentically represent who I am. And so when I got to this opportunity, I said all of these things. Hopefully that was enough of a groundwork to kind of explain to people where I was at. But when I'm sitting on that porch with my wife and she says, what do you want to do with your life? And I started immediately going to the thinking about the podcast and the direction and numbers and viewership and how we were going to get these sponsorships and what we were going to do and the people that we could reach. And then it just hit me. It was like, shit, what do I want to do? Fuck. Wait a second. I don't know. I don't know. And I said, well, I want to help people. I know that. And she goes, well, do you think you're doing the best at helping people right now? And I said, well, I think that I am. And she says, you can't even tell me what you want to do with your life. And I went, ouch. Okay. Yeah. So who am I to guide right now? And I needed to go back and do some soul searching. And I really, here I am, more money in the bank than I've ever had in my entire life, by all in intents and purposes, able to retire at 42 for the rest of my life. So, that's pretty a significant change, and I went from living relatively paycheck to paycheck. I mean, I made good money, but it's expensive to live here in the States. And I didn't have a lot of surplus of income coming in, and I was struggling to get by just like everybody else. And all of a sudden now here's all this surplus and I have no need to work. And what should be what most people would consider, I think I was doing a microdosing course with David and Cordy. Shout out to them. I love those guys so much.
Yeah, I just finished the last one, man. They're cool.
I felt so bad about that experience because here I am coming in from the podcast, but I think this is a great example, especially for your viewership. Here I am coming from a mentor space. People look at me, I'm a college professor, I'm a board treasurer at the Grunstyle Foundation. I have a lot of accolades and a lot of things going on. And I show up here, I have David on the show, and I'm talking from an authoritative position, and me and him are exploring ideas. And then I get to his microdosing course and I'm a complete wreck. I mean, complete wreck. I'm going through major depression. My brain is scattered. My thought processes are all over the place. And he's like, what the fuck am I going to do with this guy? Like, he's like just about ready to give up on me. He's just kind of like, you're a mess, dude. I don't know what's going on. And I stayed that way, unfortunately, for most of 2024. Like, that was the ride. But looking back on it, I made this huge transition to move in January, and I'm going to tie all this in together. The story, I think, is kind of important. But I needed all of those things to occur that did occur. I needed the questions. I needed the wondering. I needed being lost. I needed that time in the desert to find out who I am actually and what it is that I actually want from my life and how I want to proceed forward and what are the things that I truly do care about. And the answer is not work. For the longest time, I thought, well, I'm never going to go back to work. I don't want to work. But, we put this dirty word on work, and that's not a dirty word. Work is necessary for survival. If I've learned anything in this last year and a half of my life, I really went back to nature. I'm a big outdoorsman. I live in Colorado, and I do all things outdoors. And I'm a big dispersed camper. And so we take our truck, we drive into the woods, we get as lost as we can, and we spend as much time in nature so far away from people that they don't exist. And there's a piece there that I've really found myself in nature and being outside, waking up and feeling the energy of the animals, the energy of the forest, the ground, everything that I was connected to, where I came from, right? We all come from Earth. I think this is the one real distortion that I would like to call it that we live under is we have this weird desire. And I don't know if it's religious based because the Bible talks about this a little bit in Genesis, but people don't want to think of themselves as animals. And I know
Yeah.
I struggled with this for a while. It's like, I could look at my dog, I could look at cats, I could appreciate nature, I could do all of these things, but think about even the littlest things. Like if me and you went and we seen some like crazy, fucked up, weird tree and it was growing in the most strange way possible, you and I would both stop and be like, that's beautiful. Check that out. Look at nature doing nature, right? It survived whatever horrific event and it adapted and it grew and it changed and now it's thriving in life. Maybe it doesn't look like all the other trees, but it's still beautiful. But we could recognize the beauty in nature that we don't recognize in ourselves. We never stop and say, well, if somebody looks a little different, if they wear something a little different, or if they express themselves in a different way, oh, you're weird, you're stupid, you're dumb, whatever the case may be, you're not cool. Well, why aren't we equally as beautiful? Why can't our own unique imprint on the world be beautiful? And why can't we just appreciate that? And so I found my way kind of back to source of nature and just realizing that, you know what, I'm an animal. And it's helped me so much because just like my dog, if he doesn't get the right fitness and exercise, he starts to go a little stir crazy. He can't be locked up in the house 24/7, and neither can I. Like there are certain things that I've realized that when I have like a little bad mental health day, why don't we go on a walk? Why don't we go
Mm.
hike? Why don't we get out? Why don't we go ground? Why don't we do some things that are going to change how we feel? Because at the end of the day, I'm an animal, maybe a intellectual animal, highly evolved consciousness compared to other animals, but even that perspective has changed. I actually think animals are way more aware than we give them credit for, especially if you start to interact with them on a regular basis in their natural environment. I have like a love affair right now with bears. And the bears are like the most fascinating animals in the world. And they're highly intelligent. They're incredibly intuitive. They're super lazy. I kind of relate to a bear. I get out in the woods and I'm like, yeah, I'll work when I have to. But,
So can we
I
expect the
said all,
Stone Bear podcast
no,
coming out
that,
soon?
well, my camping name is Burning Bear. So that we had a shroom ceremony on the Strawberry Moon, and I ended up laying on the ground for like a couple hours, and it was a real great grounding moment event. But I was also cold, and so I was laying like right next to the fire, and I just
Mm.
couldn't get warm. And so yeah, they ended up naming me Burning Bear. They were like, "You're gonna catch yourself on fire," and I was like, "That's fine. That's fine. I'll take that name." It anyway, I tell all that story to kind of lead back to the path of like, yeah, can you shoot a podcast? Is that meaningful? Absolutely it is. Can you do art? Is that meaningful? Absolutely it is. What your passion in life has meaning, regardless of what it means to anyone else. We live in this world where we have somehow defined our value, our worth, our contribution to society based on these societal expectations put onto us by everyone else. And then I discovered at the end of the day, what are the things that I truly care about? Well, I care about my family. I care about my health. I care about other people. I care about their health and their families and their mental space and the things that matter to them. And I discovered that, we live in this altered concept of reality where we like to define impact by being something grand. And it's not. It's not grand at all. It's actually very personal and it's individual. If I walk down to the store and I see you and you're wearing a cool outfit, I can take time to stop in that moment and be like, hey, dude, I really like those pants, or I think that's a really cool outfit. It looks cool. whatever. A very small thing, but that engagement comes in love. I'm trying to recognize you as an individual. I'm trying to impart upon you some type of goodwill, even if it's just trying to boost your confidence for the day, or give you that extra confirmation that, what you did was good. I like that. I appreciate you as a person. And the more that I've leaned into that, that's where I've kind of found my purpose in life. Like, what is it that I want to do in life? Well, I want to live it, and I want to experience it, and I want to be as authentically true to myself as I can be in everything that I do, in every interaction that I have. And there is no greater impact than that. I don't care who you are. I don't care how big of a name you are. I don't care if you're Joe Rogan, if you're Sean Ryan. I don't care if you've got 10 million fans and everybody knows your name. If you don't live it, you're fake and you're not actually doing anything at all. And what we do in our day-to-day life, no one can know your name. But if you live a life where you're impacting people on a micro level every single day, authentically in love, with true caring and empathy and all of the other good things that come from that, and you embrace that person as a living being, and animals as a living being, and nature as a living being, and you truly embody what that means, well, to me, you're the most famous person I've ever met in my life, because you're the only one that's actually really creating change. All the other change is just fake.
It's like what Dave, talking about Dave, you were talking about Dave and Cordy before. I was kind of having the same conversation about a month ago. So, there's this feeling that I'm just not having a big enough impact. He's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I feel like I'm doing really good work. I love it. But I wanted to reach more people. He's like, well, how many people are you reaching? I'm like, well, like for instance, podcast I did, I thought I was going to like crush, had like 90 people watch it. He's like, dude, that's 90 people. Imagine you put them in one room. That's a lot of people. I'm like, good point. He's like, try to put them in an elevator. You can't. He's like, that's a substantial amount of people that have watched and now absorbed what you had to say. That's way more than if you didn't publish. And who cares if it's, one person? Your frame of reference is subjective based on some standard you set for yourself. Just because it's not a million, you don't think you're helping people. But he's like, it's all based on your point of reference. And I was like, I really took that to heart, because for whatever reason, you're talking about, these things that you imprint on yourself as like the standard that you need to achieve. I think that's where I'm at too. You're talking a lot about, just seeing the beauty and appreciating the things that are in your environment and being authentic. There's a part of me that I'm starting to recognize that I'm fundamentally an artist. And for whatever reason, accepting that is very hard for me, because the way I was brought up, the military, like I was a senior NCO for the longest time, like the idea, like the conceptualization of like the NCOs, like G.I. Joe, right? Duke, like that's the NCO. Well, he doesn't really seem like an artist. He seems like a go-getter, hardcore, ass kicker. No time for art. Maybe read a book from here and like from time to time, but you're not painting. You're not, creating literature. You're a fighter, like you're a hard-nosed dude. And so that's the image I had of myself, but it's now like metamorphosizing into something different, which is, I think, what you said, the most authentic self. And, in recent, in the last few months, we've seen how being inauthentic can like blow up in the veteran world, like Tim Kennedy, right? Like, dude wasn't authentic. Eventually that shit catches up with you, man. And it's just, I can't imagine how, I don't know if somebody who's constantly being inauthentic, that just constantly gets wrapped up in it, how they could feel. But on my end of things, I was doing a lot of coaching, which I like, but I felt, especially on certain social media platforms, specifically like Instagram, you have to be performative. I don't like that. I'm like, man, I don't mind putting up a clip from an episode, but having to like be in front of a camera and kind of like entertain somebody, that's not my thing. And so that's why I've essentially abandoned that type of quote unquote content, where I just want to write. Now I just write and I publish something from here, publish an episode, and I'm really happy about that compared to where I was before, because I kind of had a moment where, especially this past summer, I'm like, I don't want to do any of this. Do I even want to write? Do I even want to do podcasting? Do I want to do any of the things that I've been doing for the last 6 years? it was a real hard, I'm still in it, but I still do these chats, especially with guys like yourself that are really that have a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight, because it keeps me grounded.
Man, I
And,
have so
and so
much to say on like all of them.
so yeah. So before we get into testosterone, like what is it? What is it that like what are we talking about here, man? Like is it, like you're a little bit further ahead in the journey, and you're echoing a lot of things that I'm seeing as well. What's kind of the next steps here? Where do you go forward from here?
Well, I think the first, and unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to share some of my personal, spiritual, metaphysical views, nature of reality, whatever you want to call it.
Yo, dude, that's honestly, I think this is where my entire podcast is going, because that's
Yeah.
all I watch, that's all I read, that's all I discuss. I can't get enough of it. And again, going back to David Cordy, I haven't told you this, but on other shows, I've mentioned it. I had the most powerful freaking experience of my life at their jiu-jitsu retreat. And I'm still trying to figure it out, writing about it, talking about it. I entered into a realm, man, and I was like, holy shit, is this what the guys are talking about? Holy fuck. It's like,
Yeah.
wow. So my whole perception has completely changed from a experience, 5 months ago.
Well, I'm going to do my best to communicate this. This is a very large, expansive topic that took years of experience and journey to get to. So unfortunately, for a lot of listeners out there that haven't even started their path yet, this may be very difficult to understand. But one thing that, so a little bit about my background. I was an ordained minister with Assemblies of God, and grew up in a Southern Baptist background. Did that for many years of my life. I went through a period of my life once I left the church of complete atheism, came back out of that after about, I guess, 10 years, maybe, give or take. I don't know what the exact time frame is, and started to develop more of a spiritual view of life and reality. But I don't conscribe to most of the new age bullshit. That's what I like to call it, new age bullshit that's out there. You see,
Like
they've
sun in
turned,
your asshole like that.
my God, they've turned spirituality into every dirty word that religion has ever been. And that's not stating that you can't be religious and still be a good person, or you can't follow teachings of religious works, because there's plenty of wisdom there. But there's also a lot of traps there. There's a lot of negative things there. And spiritual community has done the same thing. And at the end of the day, this is kind of where I've gotten to, and what I believe is I reclaim my sovereignty. We live in a world full of distortions where everybody gives away their sovereignty to everything else. And they let the world judge them. They let God judge them. Only God can judge me. No, the truth is only you can judge you. Period. End of story. When you leave this place, you are accountable to you and your experience and your authenticity and everything it is that you put down in this place, every action that you made, you're responsible for that. And you are going to be your own judge. And know a lot of people may disagree with me there, and you may have some people like running out, blasphemy, trying to burn me at the stake. But at the end of the day, this is why I believe this, and this is why this is so important. And then I'm going to come back to it, talking about what you just said. When I was a Christian, see, you have rules in the Bible, the 10 Commandments. You have things that are called sins. And then, what's your violation for breaking a sin? If me and you are offline and I'm cussing and I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and then what can I do? I got a scapegoat. I can just run back and say, oh God, forgive me. Please, Jesus, make this go away. If I'm Catholic, I can go to confession, whatever. But see, I'm not actually authentically living my mission. See, I don't believe any of that shit. I'm doing it because somebody told me to do it. See, I gave away my sovereignty to someone else. See, God is going to judge me. So therefore, I can behave however I want to behave, justifiably to myself, because God's going to get me in trouble. See, that parent syndrome, somebody's going to come get me in trouble, but it's okay. I can just say I'm sorry. And see, the problem with that is that doesn't produce any type of real change, because what I believe is that I'm my own judge. Therefore, I set my morals, I set my boundaries, I set my code of ethic, I set my standards, I set the moral sphere of how I live my life. And guess what? I'm accountable to me. I don't get to go ask for forgiveness. I don't get to do something behind closed doors and scapegoat that away. I'm ultimately responsible for that. So therefore, if I say I believe it, I have to actually believe it, okay? And so because of that, that also allows me to fall into my own identity. Because if I am my only judge, if I am sovereign as a soul, as a being, as a human, right? And this sovereignty goes in all aspects, mentally, physically, spiritually. This is not a one road thing that like people like to do this. You get these guys that are all into fitness. They're all into mental health. They're all into spiritual everything. And well, if you see that spiritual guy and he's 300 pounds overweight, unless he's on his journey, guess what? He's not teaching you shit because he doesn't understand how this thing works. This is a holistic, complete, whole experience. My mind has to be healthy. My body has to be healthy. My spiritual awareness has to be healthy. And then I can embrace the essence of who I am as a human being, as a soul, as an energy, as a person sharing this realm with you. And when you allow yourself to get to that space, then you just stop caring about what everybody else thinks because you stop judging. See, the only reason why we care is because we judge others. Why do we judge others? Because secretly we judge ourselves.
Right.
When you make fun of that outfit that that person's wearing, when you make fun of the speech that they had, when you talk about their intellect, or you just list the guidelines. I had a lot of biases. I had a lot of bigotries and things. And I think there for a period of my life, I was denial racist. I think I was a bigot in a lot of ways. I think I was guilty of a lot of things that I would not have told you that I was guilty of. But in my true honesty with myself, I realized I'm judging people for these things. And that actually meant that I found out I was guilty of most of the things that I was, I had a thing living in Missouri for the longest time. I used to be really anti-redneck, and it was just a bigotry that I was holding on to. Why? Because I'm a redneck. Like at the end of the day, that's what I am, right? I get out and I go in the woods and I hunt and I camp and I do all kinds of weird shit. Like I don't care if I can put on Prada sunglasses.
I'm not a fucking redneck.
I am still a fucking redneck. But I started judging people based on the things that I wasn't liking about myself.
Yeah.
And then what that led me to was this holier than thou concept that you see a lot of people walking around with. They really do think they're better than everybody else, and then just realizing that they're just the same. I have no ability to judge you in your life. All I can do is watch what you do. I can disagree with you. I can say, hey, you know what? If I watch you hurting somebody or you're hurting a children, or you're doing something that violates my moral stance, then for sure, I have full right and ability to say, I don't agree with you, but I can't judge you. That is your own authentic experience. And that's the experience that you're choosing to behave in, that you're choosing to enact with. I have no right to judge you on that because I don't judge myself. I allow myself to be the person that I want to be. If I want to put on, I bought a big giant furry coat the other day. You know what? If I want to put on a giant furry coat and look like I came out of the 1800s as a frontier man, who the fuck can tell me I can't? I don't care anymore. Like, so when you get to that place where you're truly living an authentic version of yourself, when you actually stop caring because you quit judging yourself, so therefore you don't judge others, then you can say, am I an artist? Well, of course you are. And what better thing to be than a creator? In my belief, that is what we all are. We are both the creator and the creation, experiencing the creation through ourselves. It's a giant feedback loop. This is a mirroring game. We are co-creating our reality, in quotation marks. We're co-creating this. And this you can follow this through quantum science, through simulation theory, through construct theory, through all these different elements, but it's all the same thing. Yeah, Gnosticism, esotericism, like it's all the same thing. It's a feedback loop. It is the creator, which we are, experiencing ourselves as the creation, experiencing our creation. And so what greater gift could you possibly have than being an artist? That puts you at the pinnacle of creation. You know, that's one thing that OTEP said to me when I did the interview with her. A shout out to OTEP, badass fucking metal artist she is. But as somebody who is a death metal artist, somebody who is LGBT and who has definitely not had a religious stance in her life, I asked her a very poignant question because she has a lot of hate messages to God and religion in her music. And I asked her, I said, do you believe in God? And she had the best answer I ever heard from her. In fact, it was life-changing for me in the moment. She goes, of course I do. I create something from nothing all the time. I'm an artist. How could I not? You know, now maybe she didn't have full understanding of what that meant, and that's fine. But she wasn't wrong. That is the point. We're creating through our thoughts, our behaviors, our intentions. We're setting the tone for our life and everything that we do. So when you find what it is that you're passionate about, is work bad? No, work is not bad. In fact, you should work your ass off, because if we were living out in the woods and we were surviving, me and you'd be working our asses off every day. Survival is hard. Life takes work. There is no such thing as not working. You have to work to survive. When you stop working, you stop surviving, and you lose a very critical part of who you are as an animal, as a human being. You need that struggle to survive, right?
Yeah.
But then you find what is that struggle going to be in, and then you find what you're happy about. If that's making art, then you know what? You pour yourself into making art. If that's loving your family, you pour yourself into loving your family. If you're meant to be the CEO of a major organization, then you crush that, because that's what you're doing. And you find your way and you find your path and things that fulfill you. I refuse to do anything that doesn't fulfill me anymore. And I know some of your listeners out there may be like, well, yeah, it might be easy to say when you have enough money to retire. Well, that's true. That does offer a lot of freedom. Money is definitely a path to freedom in a lot of senses, but the freedom that it gave me was the ability to understand that you can't pay me enough to do something I don't want to do now, because that
Yeah.
defeats the meaning of life. The meaning of life is I'm here for experience. I'm here to experience my existence in the authentic way that I want to express it. Period. End of story. Sure, there are people that can change that. You know, there are people that can hurt me. I mean, whatever the case may be, there are people that can physically take away your freedom and your experience. But I'm going to control my controllables. And inside of my controllables, I say no. I'm only going to do that which fulfills me. And I don't care what price tag you put on it. It doesn't matter to me, because at the end of the day, I'm just trying to go back to nature, man. I'm trying to get me a little place to where I can live in the nature and be part of nature and experience my fellow humans in the same compassion and the same empathy and the same way, in the mutual respect that we see other animals in nature. Yeah, of course, we have a food chain, but you know, how many times do you see a bear that would normally kill something because it's not hungry, help something out? You know, we've lost a little bit of this humanity, so to speak, by separating ourselves from the reality of, like, you know, if we have our basic needs met, why are we hurting other people? Well, this is the greed we see in the world. This is so much of the other stuff that we see going on today. And so, you know, I would encourage you, ask yourself, what would you do if you didn't get paid for it? Like, if I wasn't paying you a dime, would you still shoot this podcast?
Yeah, because I don't get paid. Like, it's
Okay,
just-
well then,
like I get paid like passively,
Yeah.
but
But
you
then-
know, like it's not like, oh, every episode I'm making a few $100. And even if I was, I wouldn't I wouldn't be like, well, okay, well, you know what? I do episodes when I'm ready to do episodes and I have the people I want to talk to. Before, I would just take anybody that would want to come on the show, right? Because it was just getting started and I didn't know what I was doing. But now I'm like, no, I have a responsibility. I want to talk to the people that are going to bring a lot of value, but also that I find super interesting. And it has nothing to do with dollars and cents, because I genuinely just want to have a conversation and share it with as many people as possible, because I find that there's value in that, because I gain value from it, right? And to touch on what you were talking about, working hard, surviving, but also realizing that you have your own values, you have your own beliefs, and you won't betray those, because now you've got this very deep understanding of who you are. To tie that in with what we want to talk about, which is hormonal health,
30
testosterone.
minutes later.
This
This is going to be
point
like
of
one
the
of the
show.
Sean Ryan shows.
Honestly, this is the point of the show. When I get my own studio, Anthony, man, we're going to have a nice long, we're going to do a 3.5 hour long chat. I don't give a shit. Like, we're just going
Well,
to,
we're going to do that in a couple of months, because I'm coming to Montreal to see you. The next podcast that we shoot together is going to be in person.
okay, right on. So I'm literally in the middle of fixing up my studio right now. That's why it's kind of like bare bones and everything. To do just that, because I recognize that in order to have the deepest conversations, they have to be face to face. It's energy, man. It's all energies. I can sense your energy through the screen, but it's not the same. And you know that, like our conversation in Las Vegas, we're in a hotel room together, right? That was a cool conversation.
It was a great
And it could have
conversation.
gone on and on and on and on and on. But to tie what you were talking to testosterone, it's clear in the research that men that have a high enough testosterone level will stick to their guns, so to speak. They have a set of values, they have a set of moral, and they won't be swayed either way. They've done these studies. They know, this is what I believe. I'm not going to betray that. But the guys that have lower testosterone will be more easily swayed with an argument that goes against their own set of principles, morals, and values, which I find super interesting because we're seeing this massive dip in Western societies when it comes to men's testosterone levels across the board, from young guys to older guys. There's just a generalized decrease. Now, that's a multifactorial problem. I don't know if we'll fundamentally figure out why, but you decided, and you can fill in the gaps here, years ago, that you wanted to go down the road of starting testosterone replacement therapy. Now, to give the listeners just some context, and if you've been listening for a while, you'll be like, oh, Dave, you keep on talking about TRT. Like, when are you going to actually do it, bro? So I just got my last set of results, blood work. And I'm in like the low 300s, like not nanomole, it's nanograms per deciliter.
Okay.
And that's technically not low. It's anything under 300. However, every
That's
doctor
really
varies.
low.
It's still pretty low because, and the reason why I say it's low, and my doctor disagrees. He's like, no, you're right on point. I'm like, yeah, but doc, I'm 43 years old. I work out. I eat well. I sleep well. I'm conscious of everything that I do. I should at least be in the 600-700s, man. But the other issue is, like, I don't feel good. There you go. We have thumbs up.
It's working.
It's working. I don't feel great. And it's just been, 6-7 years of general malaise and a fight to get up in the morning, to do this. It's always a grind. And I'm like, doc, this can't just be like generalized depression. Like, there's no way that this is the case. I want to get after it, but then it dips. I want to get after it, but then it dips. There's got to be a hormonal component to that, and he's just dismissing me out of hand. So that's why I want to chat with you about this. You have an interesting perspective because you've been on it and now you're getting off it. So for the guys that are like, man, yeah, I want to know more because, this seems like an issue that I have as well. My testosterone might be low. Maybe I don't even know what my testosterone levels are. What initially gave you the idea, hey, maybe I should start supplementing testosterone and start replacement therapy?
Well, a lot of things. And I need to circle back just a little bit so that as I give this advice, people understand where I'm coming from with it.
Yeah.
My personal growth journey, my personal development, awakening, whatever we want to call this, is threefold. This is mind, body, spirit, right? That's what this is. And so many people that struggle with mental health issues, so many people that struggle with being spiritually lost or wrestling with those issues, they also struggle with physical issues. Our bodies are a machine. And they were designed very specifically to interact with our environment, like we said earlier, going back to nature. There's a lot of things in our society, in our food, in our environment, in the clothing that we wear, that physically alters, and the vaccines that we take, that physically alter the human body. It alters our DNA. It introduced microplastics to our cellular structure, and heavy metals into our cellular structure. Everybody has, metal toxicity from vaccines and various other things. And so when you get into the health state of the human body and realizing that this is necessary for development in any other space, then you have to look at this like you would a priest. And we say, well, a priest is going to go to seminary and he's going to study 40 years of his life and he's going to do all this stuff. He's dedicated every waking minute to that. That's great. But he's missing two other pieces of the puzzle if he's not doing the rest. The same amount of effort that goes into your spiritual quest or your mental health quest needs to go into your physical quest. And if you're missing that, then you're missing some really key elements that is what we talk about optimized physical health, optimized health in general. It's not just physical, it's physical, mental, and spiritual. And if you don't address all three of those things, then you're starting the race off a handicap. And so the best way that I like to explain this is through plant medicine. Everybody says, well, it's just psychedelics. And I said, do you even understand the nootropic power of what those psychedelics are doing? Like, let's get rid of all of the woo-woo shit. Let's just stop there. Let's just look at the mechanics. Like, if we look at Dr. Siegel's research with Washington University, and now I think he's in New York at another school up there that he's following this research with. But when they did the psilocybin studies and they looked at the neuroplasticity levels from even just small doses of microdosing psilocybin, it's regrowing brain cells, it's rewiring neural pathways. So, okay, so you take somebody who's suffering from mental depression because their brain has a certain percentage of TBI, which means that they've had enough damage that their brain is physically damaged. Okay, so I'm going to put your arm in a sling, right? Now I'm going to go teach you how to climb walls. I'm going to take you rock climbing with me. You're going to be able to climb that wall effectively with your arm still in a sling? Well, the same way you're not going to be able to heal mentally with your mental health issues when your brain is physically damaged. And the body is no different in every other aspect. If we don't heal our body, then how are we going to get to the space to where we can heal anything else? Like you said, you don't feel depressed, but you are because your body is physically depressed, because you're not healthy, because you're sick, right? There's something wrong with your body. If your hormones aren't optimized, if your physical health isn't optimized, if you haven't started doing heavy metal detoxes and you're not, some things are very unpopular in America here, but something I started doing, if you don't deworm yourself, the amount of parasites that we carry, every other country in the world regulates deworming. Why do we not deworm ourselves? Why do we not make sure that we're cleaning up our body and our DNA? Right? I limit my exposure to Wi-Fi. I limit my exposure to my cell phone. I make sure that I put things away. I try to keep, we have in our house, the Wi-Fi goes off at specific periods of the day. So we don't have it on at night while we're sleeping. Our phones go into Faraday cages, not because I'm worried about the government, because I'm trying to be healthy. I don't want that shit in my fucking sphere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So that's it, right? Whatever it is can wait until the morning. I don't need to have all this. I don't wear Bluetooth headphones anymore. Why? Because look at the brain damage studies. This came from Bluetooth technology, especially with extensive wear of headphones. See, all of these things are changing our bodies. And so when you look at food, you got to realize that inside of most food are preservatives and other chemicals, things like soy, that deregulate hormone. And this mass production of processed foods has created a hormone crisis. This is why we're seeing infidelity rates go up. And we're seeing, kids can't have babies and they're having sexual dysfunction now in their 20s and all this other stuff. It's because their bodies have been poisoned from the day that they've been born. And because the FDA says it's okay, they're just like, look, this isn't bad for me. My mom said that the other day. She went to Canada this summer and she was talking about food crisis. Everything's so much more expensive because everything they've got there is organic and everything's farm raised and they don't even allow the preservatives and the chemicals in their food over there. She goes, I think that's so stupid. And I was like, well, it sounds like you're finally eating the way that I eat. Like, I don't have a problem with that. That sounds fucking amazing. And she goes, well, I've lived my whole life eating this way. And it's like, okay, yeah, but you've also lived your whole life sick. You've also lived your whole life not optimized. How much more could you have been capable of doing if you would have just got this fixed? She had weight loss surgery back in the day. She's had heart issues. She's had all these other things going on, and people just say, well, it didn't kill me. I'm still living. Well, yeah, go on, keep eating your McDonald's, but you're not going to find the other type of health that you're looking for in all these other areas. And so, my journey started in the physical side. I realized that I was sick. I was 80 to 90 pounds overweight. I'm 5'7". Well, this is kind of weird. I know a lot of people are going to believe this. I was 5'6.5" when I started this, and I weighed about 231 pounds. And I was really heavy into fitness. I did all the diet. My background in martial arts, I was 20 years into Muay Thai and like actually trained. I was working out 5-6 days a week. I played tennis. I did stretching. I did weightlifting. I was a power lifter from 2009 to 2011. I did mixed martial arts. I fought mixed martial arts from 2006 through 2011. I had been down every diet road that anybody has ever thought of going down, whether from Weight Watchers to Atkins to paleo to the South Beach diet. Like I did it all, right? I was a very educated person in the physical space from a societal standpoint. But I didn't know shit about nutrition and I didn't know shit about fitness or any of this. And so one of the biggest blessings that happened to me in my life is I met my wife. Many years ago, about 10 years ago, I really embraced this concept of you surround yourself with the people that you want to be. They say your 5 closest people will determine the direction of your life. Now that I understand that from an energetic standpoint, it makes a lot more sense to me. But even from a behavioral standpoint, that you're going to mimic the behaviors of the people that are around you because we are mirrors, right? We mirror our environment. So you put somebody good in your environment, you're going to see good. And so I started surrounding myself many years ago around doctors and lawyers and very successful people. And I was doing it from a business thing. It's like I wanted to figure out like what's different about them than is me, right? And I learned that it was habits, habitual habits. That's the difference. It's not what they know, it's what they do. The little things, all the way down to the shit that you wouldn't think of in a million years. That's what separates a successful person from a non-successful person. And when I got with my wife, she was the first time I'd ever been with somebody that was perpetually healthy. She never really went through phases of being overweight and underweight. She was just always healthy and had been her whole life. Coincidence, from Canada. So, she was born, well, she was not born, but she was raised in British Columbia. And I think that that really created a change in her life because she got access to proper nutrition, proper ways of eating, things of doing things. And so when I got with her as this chronically out of shape, overweight, unhealthy individual who was doing everything right, I thought I really wanted to see, like, what does she do different than me? Why is she successful and I'm not? And so I started learning from her. And that was the first thing that kind of opened my eyes to this idea that there were other ways to do things. Unfortunately for me, I had started testosterone about 3 months before I met her. And if I would have met her 3 months before that time frame, I would have never have gotten on testosterone. And I had already started this journey because I was following society's path of what you're supposed to do to be healthy. And it was like, oh, get on testosterone replacement therapy. Look, Joe Rogan's on it. I'd done PEDs in the past because, like I said, I was into powerlifting and strongman competition. So, and mixed martial arts at the time, which was really heavy with PEDs. So I knew all about testosterone and Anavar and D-ball and all that stuff. So I was no stranger to like injecting myself with shit. So I thought, okay, cool, let's do this. So I jumped on the TRT train because I wanted that anabolic boost and I wanted to get my hormones regulated. When I started TRT, over the next 3 years, I educated myself on it, kind of backwards.
So you're like, well, I should really, what am I putting in my body? Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll do it and I'll learn as we go. I'll let you tell you, man.
But that's how they sell it to you, right? So you're going to go to a doctor and you're going to get a blood test, and they're going to come back to you and they're going to say, "Hey, your TRT scores are 400, right? Your testosterone's super low," and you're going to go, "Oh shit!" And they're going to say, "Hey, we got these options, and we can increase your testosterone," and they're going to explain it to you in the best way that they can. I had a great clinic. I had Victory Men's Health out of St. Louis, which I cannot say enough amazing things about. Allison and the team that worked there are highly educated in all the right ways. They still sold me a product, and I don't fault them for that. That's their job, right? But when about a year and a half after I was on TRT, I had watched a video by Gil from the Testosterone Hormone Optimization or TRT Nation, something like that. It's on YouTube. Great place for resources and learning. And he had talked about in your initial blood test, there were markers to look at, your LH, your FNH. And looking at these markers to determine the most important thing for all men when they get a testosterone test is that when you get that initial blood work, by looking at that chart, you can deduce whether you have a primary or a secondary issue creating your low testosterone. And I didn't know that at the time. And when I went back and I looked at my original blood work, I realized, well, I had a secondary issue. So a primary issue is defined as something's wrong with your hardware, like your gonads are not physically capable.
Yeah.
They're just not, right? And then the secondary would be other related issues, whether it be sleep, food intake, hormone regulation, something further up into the chain, right? Because everything comes down the chain. So there's a lot of other hormones, like people, you get all these guys that they want to squash, they want to go on estradiol and all this stuff, and they want to smash down their estrogen, and they want to do all these estrogen blockers and everything else, and they end up creating all these problems. And what they don't realize is men just don't produce testosterone. Men produce a myriad of hormones that all have to be produced in a harmonic balance with one another in order for you to be physically optimized. There's ratios that are
literally starts in your brain.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it starts in your pituitary gland and it goes down, and so your pregnenolone and progesterone and your estrogen and your LH and your FSH, all of these things are byproduct hormones that have to be in a very specific ratio to your testosterone level, which is why the testosterone level has such a range, because it doesn't really matter if you have a 400 level testosterone if everything else is in proper ratio to that, right? Because that's probably how your body was optimized, right? But if you're walking around and your estrogen levels are a 50 like mine were, And my testosterone levels were 400 when I had my original blood test. It was a shit show. But what they didn't explain to me then is why. Why was my estrogen levels so bad? Why was I so low testosterone? Well, that was directly linked to the food that I was eating and consuming. See, in our foods are preservatives and things like soy, too much dairy. There are many different things that you can consume that will increase your estrogen naturally, and they'll give you inflated levels of estrogen. And then here's the kicker. When you produce a cell of body fat, the byproduct of that body fat is estrogen production. So it's a self-feeding cycle. So you're going to eat these foods. Let's say I eat foods that are really high in soy. It causes a spike in my estrogen. Then I put on body fat, because what does estrogen do? It accumulates body fat. It puts on more body fat, which is why women who have higher estrogen levels have a higher percentage of body fat than men. So you put on body fat. And then what does the body fat do? It produces more estrogen, which now keeps this estrogen cycle going.
It's a positive feedback loop. Yeah.
It's a complete positive feedback loop. It keeps this cycle going. And so you end up in this space to where you will never be optimized. And people don't want to change how they eat. The step one, if you go to the doctor and you realize that you have a secondary issue, well, there are so many things that you should try for months and months before you even consider getting on a synthetic testosterone. Because the second that you get on a synthetic testosterone, yes, it is true that I don't believe your body can tell the difference. But what you are doing is you're putting that synthetic in your body, and it is telling your body that you have produced enough testosterone, which means that your entire system, I think it's called the endocrine system. I am not a doctor. Yes. I'm just
yes, your hormonal system is the endocrine system.
So I'm a doctor of business, not medical, but it shuts down your endocrine system. So you stop producing testosterone. So step one, your gonads stop producing sperm, which is your LH goes to zero, FNH goes to zero, or FSH goes to zero. So you end up in no male natural production at all. And now you're supplementing.
Most like doctors will say like that's male birth control. Like there's no need for a male birth control pill, because if you inject testosterone regularly, you shut down all your ability, like you said, to produce sperm, but also testosterone, because they come from the same place. So your body goes, all right, cool. Like don't need this anymore. And that's why you can get like testicular shrinkage and all the other things that come with it too.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. All that stuff shrinks up because you're putting yourself into an artificial state. And then the other problem with that is, see, just your testosterone levels are high. So now all of a sudden you go from 400 to 1,000, but your estrogen isn't producing anymore because your endocrine system shut down. So now your estrogen is out of balance, which is why everybody's got to go on all these estrogen blockers and estradiol
and all that shit. Yeah.
Right. And then what else do they end up on? They end up on pregnenolone or progesterone, and they end up going into the whole space because, oh, by the way, your body still needs these things to function and you're no longer producing them, sir. So they end up causing as many problems, which is why when people talk about dialing in their protocol, it takes years. It took me 3 years to dial in my protocol, right? It took me a long time to kind of figure out like where my protocol was going to be. And then I realized, I had a very high testosterone level anyway. So I was somewhere between like 1,000 and 1,500, and I always felt normal. And I tell people, I said, Gita, you really got to base this on who you are as an individual and what your physical body is. There is real no gauge. If you're at like I was 1600s and you're not having acne, you're not having aggressive outlets, you're not having mood changes, you're not seeing, weird hair growth or any of this other stuff that could be going on, then you're not an artificial or superhuman dose of TRT, because I've done that in powerlifting with PEDs. And I will tell you, there's a huge difference between being optimized and being superhuman levels of testosterone and artificial drugs. Like, yeah, there is a point that you can definitely feel the difference. But when I was optimized, I just felt normal. Like there was no real change. It was what I learned about diet and nutrition. It's what I learned about fitness and exercise and all of those things that made the difference.
Yeah, that's a message that I really like, because that's ultimately what, when guys would come through any of my coaching programs, and myself included, you got to dial in the habits before you start smashing a symptom, because that's how our entire healthcare system works. Oh, you have high blood pressure? Here, take this pill. Yeah, but why do you have high blood pressure, dude? Like, oh, you're overweight? Cool. Yeah, here, take Wegovy. Yeah, but why are you overweight? And it comes down to your base principles. Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Are you getting in nature? Do you have people around you that are positive, that are like creating a life that is not stress free, but is enjoy. Like, these are all really important concepts. You mentioned something about too, like your stress levels were likely very high.
Cortisol was through the roof.
And so, yeah, the cortisol is such an important hormone, neither good or bad. Hormones are there for a reason, but when they're dysregulated, when you're chronically stressed, it's going to be very hard for you to maintain a high enough testosterone level just because cortisol competes for testosterone. And so therefore now you've got like gas and brake at the same time. And if you're like, hey, let's jab in more testosterone, even though your cortisol levels are through the roof, like it just adds in more complication and potentially more serious complications for your health long term. Like you were saying, you're shutting down your endocrine system when it comes to producing testosterone and all the other cascade effects that could potentially happen by adding in synthetic testosterone. So that being said, you got to a point where you realize, oh man, maybe I should have just fixed my habits. Because if you have, I had this conversation too with another doctor. If you're just looking at your testosterone as a number and like number go up is like is all you're trying to accomplish as a doctor or as like the patient, you're kind of missing the point. Because if you feel good, if you're able to add muscle, if everything seems to be, why would you need higher level of testosterone other than the fact that, well, I want it at 1,000? Well, why? You know, I think guys can fall into that trap. And, you know, I don't know what I feel like with a higher, and that's the other thing too. Until I get to a higher level, I don't even know what that feels like. Theoretically, I'm probably in a place where like, I don't know where good feels like because this is the way I've always felt. And until a bunch of things change, this is just my status quo.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think a lot of guys operate in this realm where they're just not optimized. They're underperforming. They don't even recognize what good feels like. So, you know, what was the moment for you that you're like, you know what? I don't think this serves me anymore.
Man, there was a lot of moments. And then I want to comment on a few things that you made. And this may be a very difficult thing for your viewers to hear and actually listen to. In the space of testosterone and nutrition and fitness, I think the number one important thing that they have to realize is that medical professionals that they have been relying upon their whole life don't know shit at all. Like the medical understanding of hormone optimization, most educated patients are so far more educated than their doctors are ever going to be on the subject that they don't even have a chance of catching up. And the other side of that is they don't teach nutrition in medical school. They teach the food pyramid, which is not real nutrition, and they teach other things that are not nutrition. So your doctor doesn't know nutrition any better than you do, and he doesn't understand the principles of it. So those are just facts. And I don't mean to try to sound arrogant. I'm not claiming to be smarter than a doctor. I just know that in certain areas, I definitely know more. And this is one of those areas that not all doctors, I'm sure there's some very educated doctors out there that do. But when I'm speaking about the holistic majority of what we see
in general, yeah.
In general standard medicine practices, there are the ignorance in these spaces is tremendous. And so one of the things that I'd like to recommend to your viewers that made a difference in me, every time I had went through and I had done a diet, it was all in. I'd jump in with both feet. It's like, oh, you know, I'm going on Weight Watchers now. And I would just crush Weight Watchers, right? And then it's short-lived. You have problems but this is where you get this like yo-yo effect, right? You go in and you go out and you backslide and whatever.
Yes.
So one of the things that I changed when I first started this is I started implementing one change every 3 weeks. And when I mean one change, I mean literally like one change. It's like, you know what? I'm going to go under 20 grams of carbs today. That's the goal. And then I would do that for 3 weeks. And there's a reason for this. One, it takes 2 weeks of doing anything to develop a new habit. And this is all about habits, right? We said that earlier. It's all habitual. It takes 2 weeks to develop anything as a habit. If you start a new job and it's a construction job and you've been working at a desk for 20 years, 2 weeks later, it will become a new habit. It'll be something that your body adapts to. We're highly adaptive as humans. And so I gave myself time to, 1, make a change, 2, let that change become habit. 3, I documented throughout the time frame. Another reason for that is with supplements or with nutrition, you don't see the impacts right away. It could take 6 to 8 weeks or sometimes longer for you to build up enough of that supplement or enough of a nutritional change in your body to be able to actually start seeing the benefits, which is why most people don't stick with it. They'll start supplementing this or they'll supplement that or they'll make this diet change and they'll be like, it's been 10 weeks and I don't feel any different. Like, well, you may or may not. You don't know what you changed, you know, and so it's going to take time because you got to realize you've been doing this damage over such a long period of time. You know, it may take 12 weeks for something to really kind of kick in and get you to where you need to be. So don't expect those results right away. But in those 3-week time frames, I would document the differences. And then I kept going down the road and I'd make another change. Every 3 weeks, I'd add one more thing, add one more thing, add one more thing. That went on for a little over 3 years until I finally got my diet dialed in. Like, this is diet, habitual nutrition, behavior in general, and supplementation, all of these things. And this is all the period why I'm on TRT. And so I realized I get to this point where, you know, I'm shooting myself up. I'm having all these other issues. And that's the other important thing to talk about too. I've had a very high libido my whole life, like super high libido. I was addicted to porn. I had all these other things in my past life. And so I was definitely somebody who would describe myself as like overly sexual. Like everything was just about sex 24/7. And one of the things that happened to me when I went on TRT is I ended up with ED, and it came out like in nowhere. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, it was the most,
Whoa.
I'm expecting like this is going to be like this tremendous, like I'm going to go into like hyper sex mode. And it did not.
You're gonna need a
I
bucket
ended up
next
in
to your
like,
desk just to fill up every day, man. Like, yeah, you're gonna be milking yourself to just stay normal.
yeah, it was terrible. So as soon as I got on TRT, like almost immediately within the first couple of weeks, like once the TRT really started to have an impact and my natural production stopped, I started to experience ED, and that mentally crushed me. And I joke with people all the time, and it's not a joke. I have more PTSD from those periods of ED than I do from my time in Iraq. Like, that crushed me as a human. I almost killed myself 3 times. Yeah, like if I thought I was depressed before I got on TRT, like getting on TRT and then ending up with ED, like I was ready to blow my fucking brains out. Like, it didn't matter. Like, I mean, I was so close to killing myself on 3 different occasions that it's a miracle I didn't. And it did completely strip me of my identity as a man. It neutered me in so many ways. It just took away my confidence, my self-esteem. Like, I don't care how big and how tough you look or how much muscle you've got or how much you can kick somebody's ass. Like, man, when that goes away, dude, that took the core of my humanity out of me. And I was able to figure out my protocol over time and get my sexual function back, and you using like Cialis and Levitra and things like that. I got back to what was relatively a normal sex life. But that stuck with me. It had always been there. And so it was about November of this year, November of 24, that I kind of realized, like, you know, I've been so consistent for so long with health, nutrition, fitness. My weight is super regulated. I don't fluctuate in weight anymore. I'm just am. Yeah, I don't know what else to call it. Like, I just stay fit now. And it's because I eat correctly and I have the right habits and I do the right things. And like, I don't have to diet. I don't have to work on my fitness, right? I don't have to work on nutrition. I don't wonder if I wake up tomorrow, am I going to be 5 pounds heavier? I've just got that so dialed in at this point that it's just as easy as I can get out of bed and walk in the morning. I can maintain my weight and I can walk around that way, and
Thanks.
I can maintain my fitness. Like, it's just part of who I am as a human. It's not like a thing that I do. So I just realized that I didn't need this in my system anymore. It wasn't doing me any good. And I had all the tools that I needed, but you know, you have all the rhetoric out there and all the fear and all the stuff that goes on to that. And it was a very scary decision to come off of TRT. But I was so confident in my ability to regulate my hormones naturally because of the lifestyle changes that I had made, that I knew, regardless of what it was, and I couldn't get anybody to help me with post-cycle therapy. So I didn't have any of the options to go on like Clomid or was it Clomid and Novadex and whatever. I don't remember the exact recipe, right? But I didn't get any post-cycle therapy. So I had nothing to restart my system. I had nothing. It just was like, oh, I'm going to have to do this on my own.
You're raw dogging this.
So what I did is I did a graduated step down, because I was thoroughly convinced that because my body is optimized, because my mind is optimized, because my spirit is optimized, and I'm aware of what I am. I do believe that in a spiritual sense that we can control our cellular expression. And I can kind of sort of prove that. I mean, I guess you just have to take it as my own conjecture, but I've grown 1.5 inches. I'm 5'8" now. Like, I did that
Sorry,
in my
what?
40s.
Dude, say that again. You were 5'6.5".
And I'm 5'8" now. Like,
In
actually.
how many?
About 5 years.
You're taller?
Yeah.
Dude, that's fucking crazy, man.
My physically changed too. You can look at pictures of me. My facial structure has changed. And not aging. like actual physical changes. This is a larger conversation, but I do believe that as
You
souls, we
just
are
opened up
charged.
a whole new podcast episode.
I'm sorry. I do believe that as souls,
There's like four episodes in one right now.
oh, dude, I've seen like huge changes. I've grown physically in every aspect, even down there. Like I've grown over 1.5 inches in the last 5 years, and with no additional changes or anything, just changing my cellular expression, getting healthy, allowing my body to optimize, getting myself back to where I wanted to be. Um, I had a doctor explain it to me a while back. He said that everybody has a pre-genetic code of what they're going to mature into, and he goes, his theory was that I had unlocked whatever blockage was keeping me stunted, that I had actually failed to fully mature. And so the diet, nutrition, the improper fitness, all these things that come into your life as a child, and that he said that he believed that I had stunted my development. And then once I started coming into this optimization of health, that I was able to kind of unlock that. That was his theory. I don't know if there's truth to that. I know that the truth is, what did I do? Well, I made a ton of lifestyle choices and a lot of behavioral choices. And then in my conscious awareness as the soul that I am, I told my body to start expressing in the way that I wanted it to. And when I started to do that, I started to see real change. And so I believe in that, and I believed in that. And maybe that's the placebo effect. I think you listeners can take from this whatever they want to take. It doesn't really matter. The end results are still the same. If this is just placebo and it's all in my head, my brain is telling my body to do things that I wanted to do, then so be it. If it's because I'm a soul energy and I have the ability to do that, then so be it. Results are the same. I don't care. Doesn't mean a
Yeah,
word
well,
to me.
that falls in line with, oh shit, I'm forgetting his name already. Dr. Shit, I forget his name. So he looks at the whole metaphysical from a scientific
You
standpoint.
talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yeah, Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah. I mean, that
Mhm.
would fall in line with, and the science behind that is epigenetics.
Yep.
Which is a fascinating field of genetics, because when I was going through school and doing my study in genetics were fixed. You had your genes and they were on or off. That's it. There was
Yep.
no nuance. It was, no, you get your set from your mom and your dad. That's it. Sorry. You can't change things because of your environment or because you will them to change. But we're seeing the research is like, no. It seems like the ancient technology of prayer, meditation, becoming more conscious gives you the ability to start from the inside. So yeah, it's a conscious thought that changes the energetics of the cells that then go, oh, thank you. That's all I needed. Let's make this happen. So, I mean, hearing it from you is wild, but I definitely believe it. Like, that's something that I truly think is the next step in our elevation as a species, is to expand that consciousness to the point where it's like, no, we're healing machines, but we've lost that ability to recognize that if we have an issue, I'm not talking about like, we're squirting blood out of an artery here. Like I'm talking about, hey,
Well,
there's
it's
hormonal
because
disbalances and whatever it may be. We're able to enact a healing protocol, but we have to be consciously aware of it and actually focus on it to make that change happen. And it's gradual over time. It's fascinating to hear it from you.
yeah, it's because it's all interconnected. And if I have any problem with the way that the information is being presented, and the problem is not enough people are looking cross-disciplinary. Everybody wants to answer this from biological sciences, material sciences, non-material sciences. Nobody's looking across the board. And so there's somehow, when we get into these conversations, people want to believe that there is a difference between quantum science and physical health. And there's a difference between that somehow and my spiritual belief. No, it's all the same thing. It is all interconnected. We are energy. All things are energy, and behind all things is the conscious energy, right? And I can prove that because there's intelligent design in all things. You look at an inanimate object, or something that we'd like to call an inanimate object, at the atomic level, it is performing tasks and features that are intelligent, that are doing what it is supposed to be doing so that it can materialize as a rock. That is how we perceive that. But at the atomic level, there's a consciousness in it. It is not dead. It is alive. It is moving. Inside of my body, I don't have hands. There isn't a spoon, right? Inside of my body is the same atomic expression that is also being governed by the same consciousness, right? I don't have to define that consciousness to understand what that is. And so my cells are intelligent. and I am consciously intelligent, but my conscious intelligence is a very small percentage of my overall intelligence because I don't have to tell myself to breathe. There's a massive amount of information and instruction and command and code that is getting played out by my subconscious on a daily basis that I have nothing to do with, right? But what I've realized is I have the ability to communicate with that subconscious. I have the ability to put suggestions in that subconscious through my beliefs that will allow that my larger self, my subconscious self, to interact with my body, to interact with the energetic field around me, to change the things that are in my environment. And so I think that that is what we see with the placebo effect. I see this is what we see in the spiritual realm with people talking about psychic abilities and liking natural gifts. In what we see in the quantum sciences realm with, quantum computing and the
Quantum
interconnectedness.
entanglement.
Yeah, quantum entanglement. See, the problem is they're not all separated. They're all the same thing. They're just being looked at from different lenses and different spaces. And I think what people are missing is they're failing to put them together. They're failing to understand the interconnectedness of all of this. And if you look at it from that way, then you get into like Dr. Courtney Hunt, her study on light. She wrote a book about when the egg fertilizes, there's a zinc spark and light comes in. Well, we understand that light is the energy of creation, right? Light, we are all here because of light, right? So it's all sound, frequency, vibration. And it doesn't matter if you understand that on a spiritual level, that is the physical level too. It's all sound, frequency, and vibration. This is the patterns of energy and the light of energy. So when you get into like health, it's like, okay, well, what is the first thing that I do in the morning? Well, I wake up and I walk outside and I stare at the sun and I sit in the sun for 10 or 15 minutes. I lay on the ground and I ground. Why? Because there is energy that is occurring there. There are hormone regulations. Like, why do I get morning sun? Because that's when you produce melatonin. If you want to sleep better at night, you need to get out in the morning and get the sunlight. See, our bodies were designed to interact with our natural environment. We already have all the things that we need for healing. There's a resonance frequency of the earth. There's an actual energetic exchange of energy that occurs when you make contact with the ground. And there's so many distortions in space. When you wear shoes with rubber soles, well, you're blocking the conductivity of the energy between you and your environment. We're separating ourselves. When you wear clothing with polyesters in it, polyester is full of microplastics. They've actually proven it's been banned in several countries. This is why they don't allow it in places like Africa, like the tribes of Africa. Would be like you're wearing poison. We have dyes and we have polyesters and these microplastics in our clothes that has literally changed the DNA of the human being so much that when children are born, they're born as infant, day one in this planet with microplastics already in their body, already changing their DNA cellular structure. So if our DNA was designed to interact with our environment at an optimal level, and we're wearing polyester clothes. I've tried to switch as much as I can to like organic cottons. I wear wools now.
Yeah.
I've gotten rid of the polyesters and the synthetic fabrics and the rayons and things like that for my body because they're poisoning you every single day. And it's not because I'm crunchy or because oh my God, look at this guy. He just thinks, he's not going to wear polyester. I've been wearing polyester for 20 years. You have. And you have microplastics in your body and your DNA has been changed. And there is plenty of research to explain to you how that happens. And it doesn't matter.
You're absorbing them through your nuts because you wear polyester underwear.
And it's lowering testosterone. It's lowering fertility rates. It's keeping your body from cellularly expressing in an optimized way, which is going to impact all of your health in every one of those areas. And so the changes that you got to make go into all of that stuff. And then it goes into the food that you eat. Are you consuming foods? Like, first off, soy. Soy is in fucking everything. Is soy bad for you? No. In a small amounts and certain levels, sure. But when you got soy in the candy bar that you just ate, and you got soy in this, and you got soy in that, and then you had the soy sauce, and then you went here. Well, now all of a sudden, what does soy do? It smashes testosterone, elevates estrogen, right? So you have this estrogen-rich environment. Then you get into the wheats with the, whether it be gluten-free or not like that. What people don't realize is it's not that like let's talk about gluten-free because I'm a gluten-free individual. And do I have an allergy to gluten? No, not really. I have a very mild gluten allergy. Why do I choose to be gluten-free? Because we have genetically modified foods over the time and we have changed the actual structure of the food. Wheat that exists here in the United States that they put into food isn't the same wheat that they serve in certain places. You can actually buy original non-GMO, non-modified wheat variants in countries like Italy. And you can have that
Yeah.
shipped to the United States. And those people, they recommend those for gluten-free diets because they don't have the whatever the scientific terms. My wife could tell you all this stuff. This is where she's a genius and I am not. But it has certain enzymes in it, and the way it interacts with your body is what creates the sensitivity and the inflammation. And inflammation is the number one killer in your body. Like if you have two things that you should eliminate from your life before you do anything, and you mentioned it earlier, stress and inflammation. I believe that these are the core roots of every major disease and ailment in the human body. I
Dude,
think
it's not
that
even, it doesn't even have a belief. That's literal science. It's like
fact.
80% of
Yeah.
all known Western diseases are rooted in inflammation.
Yeah.
That's obesity,
don't care
that's
how-
high blood pressure, that's Alzheimer's, cancer. It's
Yep.
all inflammation.
All inflammation and all stress, right?
Yeah.
And stress causes inflammation. And we live in a highly stressed society. And that's where the mental health stuff comes in, because how do you mitigate and manage the stresses through the mental health? But you also have to fix the body. And this is why it isn't just one thing. If you're not fixing and optimizing your body, well, then you're not going to get a handle on the stress issue. And if you can't get a handle on the stress issue, then how are you going to fix the body? And now all of a sudden it's got this feedback loop and it just continues. And this is why people are stuck in the hamster wheel and they're running this trap. They don't know what to do because they don't understand where to start. And then the problem is nobody is selling this because there's nothing to sell.
Oh, there's no money in it.
There's no money in it. I haven't told anybody anything right now that costs them $1 to do. All I've told you to do,
get sun in your face, go for a walk, drink good water, eat good food. Well, I mean,
lay
you
on
gotta
the
buy the
fucking
food.
ground, dude.
It's
Stop wearing poison clothes and stop eating poison food. Lay on the fucking ground for 15 minutes a day. Get some sunlight. The only thing that as I went down this thing, the other thing that I'm going to talk on real quick, because this is very important. I think that the number one pinnacle to health is fasting. And
cool.
Yeah, fasting is everything. And I'm not talking about intermittent fasting. I'm talking about like real long-term scheduled fasting. There are reasons why this matters. Now, intermittent fasting, I think, is great because I think we live in a society where this is where the bullshit starts. We live in a society where they're always trying to sell you a product. So what do they tell you? Well, you need to eat 3 meals a day. No bullshit. You don't need to eat 3 meals a day. I am 5'8". I'm 175 pounds. I've got about 8% body fat. I walk around. I wear a 44 to a 46 suit coat. I'm a pretty decent sized build dude. I'm not huge. I am not small, but I carry around more muscle mass than your average guy. And I'll tell you what, I eat once a day sometimes, and I go for up to 20 to 30 days without eating at least a couple of times a year. And, I do at least a 7 to 10 day clean fast every quarter of the year. And then every week, I do at least a 48-hour fast at the beginning of every week. And then the rest of the time I eat more like a warrior diet where I eat 1 meal a day, where it means I just go throughout my day and do whatever I want, or I give myself a very small eating window. And again, these aren't things that are structured like, that I work on. These is just how I live now. And you realize everybody's going to tell you, it's like, oh, you're going to lose all this muscle mass. You got to have X amount of this and X amount of that. And you got to have all this stuff and you're going to lose muscle and your body's going to eat itself. And bullshit, and more bullshit.
Well,
I have put on
the biggest way to prove that wrong is that, hunter-gatherers, as we were evolving as a species, if we lost muscle that fast, we went huge periods without eating, obviously, because we didn't have refrigerators. Well, that means we get weaker and weaker and weaker as the days went on, and we would have been erased as a species. But in reality, you get stronger, more dialed in, and you're not going to burn the most precious resource, which is muscle mass, as soon as you don't have food in your body. That doesn't make any sense evolutionarily. So that whole reasoning is just bro logic. It doesn't make any sense.
If you look at the science on what happens the first 7 days of fasting, so I did a few things. So one, I've lost 80 pounds of body fat. So when you look at my initial body fat scans and the measurements that I had when I started my journey, if you deducted the body fat percentage down to about where I'm at right now, it would be about 150 pounds. About 155 pounds would be about my walking around weight. I walk around 175. So I put on 20 pounds of muscle while losing 80 pounds of body fat. And how did I do that? I did that through fasting, because I watched a great video by Thomas Denauer that broke down what happens to growth hormone levels when you get through the 7 days of fasting. And growth hormone rises from day 1 to day 7. And the reason for that is exactly what you said. Makes sense, right? If we're going 2 or 3 days and we have to hunt for our food, one, you're not going to get a kill. Anybody that's hunted, dude, I spend more times in the wood hunting than I do killing anything. Like, that's just a fact. Like, it's not easy to do. You don't just walk in the woods, kill an animal, go home. This could take days, if not weeks, to figure that out. And you're going to be subsisting on whatever you can forage, right? Small bugs, other sources of protein, berries, fruits. That you're going to have small handfuls of these types of things throughout the time. But your meats and your proteins, you're going to be lucky if you get that once a week. And so what happens is your growth hormone levels will increase because your body understands the necessity to maintain muscle mass. Because if it all of a sudden started to go after the best nutrition of muscle, then when it came time to kill so that you could eat, you wouldn't have anything there. And so then your energy level goes up too. As you get into that second, third, fourth day, all the way up to like the 5th day, dude, I feel like I'm on fucking crack. Like, it's
It's a weird feeling.
I'm like ready to go. Like, I go down to sleep in like 4 hours a night. Like, I'm like up, I'm alert.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the other thing too. You can sleep better, but a lot less.
Oh yeah.
It's fascinating when you do it, and I've done it a few times too. It's next level shit.
Yeah, my energy levels go through the roofs. I use fasting to keep my growth hormone levels at a hyper state. And you can see this in my blood work because when I first started getting into this, I was doing this in combination with sauna, which also boosts growth hormone levels. Okay. Yeah. So using sauna, using high intensity training. So I do battle rope sessions that also will boost growth hormone levels. And then there is a group of supplements, taking calcium, HMB, L-arginine, creatine, and one other supplement that is
TMG?
skipping. What did you say? No, that isn't it. I'll have to think of. I'll think of it later, and that way we can add it to the show notes. But it's a growth hormone stack, and what you do is you take this within periods of heavy. You get a growth hormone boost from heavy lifting. So one of the things that I'll do, for example, is like when I'm fasting, especially on extended fast, I will change how I work out. I don't do any high intensity training during fast. I do long, slow, heavier weights, but I stay within about 70 percentile. I never go really much above 80. I don't try to exhaust myself. But what I'll do is instead of working out for 40 or 50 minutes a day, high intensity, maybe I'll just work out for like 3 or 4 hours and I'll go rock climbing. But I'm doing something that is physically challenging. That has got you can increase your growth hormone levels by 200-300%. And then you jump in and then you do that again with this, within about an hour after that workout, I would hit this supplement stack that would also further do that. I was doing that in combination. So, I go in, I forget the exact numbers, but I can show you the chart because I got it. There's your growth hormone levels are supposed to be like a high of like a 2.2. And mine were like at a 14. And they came back and they were like, are you taking HT?
Yeah.
No. They're like, we think you're supplementing growth hormone. You really need to let us know. We're not going to be mad, but you need to tell us. And I said, no. I said, what are you doing? I said, I fast. I said, I do sauna. I make sure I get sunlight. And they were like, what? No, this got to be wrong. And so they sent me back for more tests. Came back the same way. And so they've been thoroughly convinced that I've been supplementing HGH now for like, years.
You have freaking tumors
because of lifestyle changes. Because of those things that we've been talking about that science can't sell you. What are they going to sell you? Sitting in a hot box? What are they going to sell you? Getting sunlight? What are they going to sell you? Not eating food? How are they going to make money when you don't eat? Can you imagine how much the food change would happen if the entirety of America, 350 million Americans just ate once a day?
Yeah. If they just ate when they were hungry.
Oh my goodness.
And on top of that, all the shit food that's out there causes you to be hungrier because that's the insidious part, right? You're eating, but you have zero nutrition value in the food. So your body goes, yeah, but dude, I need way more. Like, so you go, well, this is all I have. So you smash more of the completely nutritional, depleted food. And usually it's got a lot of carbs. And that tells your gut more, please, like give me more, taste delicious, let's do it. And now you're just, again, positive feedback loop into oblivion. And people don't recognize that is one of the key drivers of your inflammation and poor health is that constant drive to feel like you need to eat. And there's a dopamine aspect too that people don't recognize, like, being like hungry and bored. right? You just, well, what do you typically, pretzels, chips, all that bullshit
Mhm.
food. That's what's getting you in trouble. Because if you just said, hey, the only time I'm going to eat is if I have a meal. If you just
Yep.
did that and you're just like, well, and you don't even have to put restrictions on it, especially if you're just starting out. I'm just going to have a big meal. There might be some dog shit in that meal, but that's the only meal I'm going to have. Your life starts to change just based on that, because you're restricting the time you get that food in your body, and your body goes, okay, well, I need a little more eventually. It's like, okay, cool. So then you can put in a little bit more if you need, but it's understanding and recognizing how you are, not being controlled by a substance in the food, because that's all it is. You're talking about sovereignty before. You're no longer in control when the food is controlling you, right? It's just like,
Mhm.
it's such a basic human thing to be able to do, but we've lost it because we just abdicated control on basically everything. And the cost is your health. It's really
Yeah.
fascinating. So if I understand your thesis, testosterone is the symptom or the marker
Yeah.
of something not quite right in the system. And
Yeah.
rather than you just be like, well, I'm on TRT, I guess it's all solved. You're like, nah, there's more to it. And so you got down into the root causes, which stress, your psychological state, the food that you're eating, the sleep, the movement, the getting outside. These are all things that you recognized. Okay, I got to spend some time on it, and I'm going to change these things, like you said, on a step-by-step basis. I'm going to do it for 3 weeks. Cool. Implemented. Next. And by doing so, you've taught, essentially you teaching your body, no, I'm healthy now. And your body responds in kind and says, yeah, you're right. And is it safe to say that your testosterone levels are at normal, like at a normal range right now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
I came off
fascinating, man.
I came on and off in November of 24. And the only thing that I did is I weaned myself off. So what I did is I found
Yeah.
this one doctor online that provided this graduated release process, so that one of the dangers you get when you go cold turkey off testosterone is because you don't have your gonads producing testosterone and they're already in a state of atrophy, that
Yeah.
you can actually cause too much stress to the body by coming off cold turkey. And what it does is it actually creates this shock that leaves you that completely suspended, where it just won't come back on. And so he recommended this graduated system where I cut my dosage down by, I think it was halves. I don't remember the full details right now, but I did it halves for like 2 weeks, like 4 shots, which I was doing 2 shots a week. And then so I did 2 weeks, I did 4 shots, and then I'd cut it in half. And I did that until I got down to and I think I only did like a 10 or 20% reduction each time. And then I would do half of that. So by the time I got down to where I would think I was at, like, I think I was taking I think I was still at 1 or 1.2 a week, and I went down to a point 0.4. So once I got down to there, I stayed there for 2 weeks, and then I just came off cold turkey. And I already had noticed within that time frame that my body was changing. I felt like my body had already started picking up production as soon as it started going lower. Because again, I think I'm optimized in that higher level. I think that 900 to 1500 range is probably where I've been most of my life, which explains why I was just so horny growing up. My teenage years were a little rough. You know, I was definitely a horny freaking dude, man. And I was like running around like all crazy. I was like definitely living by my penis. And my testosterone levels must have been ridiculous, but you can kind of see that I bolded early. I've got tons of body hair, facial hair, like all the markers of a super high testosterone human. So I believe that's the case. And I felt like my body picked up right away. As soon as it was just like, what the fuck? We're not here right now, because my body in every other way was optimized already. I had everything that I needed to be where I needed to be. The only thing I had was, the problem was, I had the synthetic in my body that wasn't allowing my body to function the way that my body needed to function. So even though I was optimized, it still wasn't functioning. My endocrine system was completely shut down. And so almost immediately started getting like testicular discomfort and like aching and pain, like everything kind of waking back up. A lot of my testicular atrophy had went away. All within 2 months, my libido had completely resurged. I was able to come off the Levitra and the Cialis. I didn't need that anymore. The ED had went away. It just seemed like all of this wonderful stuff. And now it's been about 8 months, 8 to 10 months since I've been off completely. And I still work out regularly. I'm 44. I'm a rock climber. And if anybody does rock climbing, they understand like that is a very difficult, challenging sport. And so I'm constantly putting my body on the demands, and I climb indoor, outdoor, and my body is responding just fine. No differences now, 8 to 10 months later versus when I was on testosterone is sitting at 1500, and I didn't need any post-cycle therapy. I didn't need anything. All I needed was a healthy lifestyle, an optimized body, and the awareness that my consciousness could command my body to cellularly express the way that I told it to. And once I got those three pieces of the puzzle, I was able to come off. And that's the reason why, you know, when we talked the other day, I said, man, unless you're doing everything else, unless you have tried everything else, the last resort is testosterone. Do I think it's a great thing? If you have a primary issue and your gonads are just fucking, they just don't work, right? They're in the shop and they need some repairs. Then I get it. And I would say at that point, yes, but you got to realize even in that moment, you're now changing the rest of your life from that point forward. You have something that you will never be able to come off of. You are always going to be dependent upon that synthetic. That synthetic is not going to optimize the rest of your body, which means that other health issues are going to be a result. And oh, by the way, as you age and change and lifestyle changes, that protocol is going to have to change and adapt as those other things start to change. You are signing yourself up for a lot of work, and you're a lot of trial and error and a lot of frustration and a lot of ups and downs. Like I suffered more depression on TRT than I ever did off because you're constantly in this roller coaster of hormone fluctuation. When I'm producing testosterone naturally, I don't have that. I stay consistent because my body produces a certain amount at night and I wake up in the morning and I'm optimized. When I do TRT, I artificially bump it up and then it starts to drop down. And then I hit it midweek and it goes back up. And then what am I trying to do? I'm trying to keep it level. I'm not ever level. I'm either super high, super low, super high, super low. And so every time you're on that roller coaster, you know, 3 days after your shot and you're shooting up again, man, if you miss a day, if you have a 2-day delay, or like, what if you went on vacation, you forgot your vial at home and you can't do your shot? Or what if you got to fly and they're not going to let you fly with needles? Like, shit, do you have your prescription? Where are you going? Like, there are so many things that come along to being on TRT that are not easy, and they're not fun. And I didn't feel nearly as good on TRT as I do off. So I would never recommend it to anyone if they have other alternatives to pursue, because it's not the fix all. It isn't going to do this great thing that you think it's going to do. And the lesser talks about side effects, like, again, they're trying to sell a product. They're not telling you that, oh man, you know, we have about 20 to 23% of patients that go on TRT end up with irreversible, unfixable erectile dysfunction. You okay with that? Yeah. But where was that conversation before you stuck me? Like,
Yeah.
I would have liked to have known that, because all I heard was, this is going to turn me into a freaking hormone raging sex addict. And like, I was like, sign me up. I was going to go on Marine on it. I was like, throw the sand on the wall. Let's go.
It just doing 1,000-pound deadlifts and just crushing life. And the sexy image of the optimized human, right? Just kicking ass and taking names. But like all things, there's a cost. There's always a side effect. There's never the perfect solution other than getting down to the root causes and doing the hard work that builds you over numerous years into the person that you truly want to be. And I'm glad that, you're able to give us a lot of context here, because that's, I've done a lot of content on like why you should be checking your hormones, because most guys, especially in our community, no idea, right? Because there's a whole other discussion where I think especially in the veteran community, where we follow orders really well. So a doctor, before they give you an SSRI or they do therapy, or their first line of defense, if you want to call it that, is prescribe you a pill, to prescribe you. And it's like, oh, you're depressed. Okay, here's an SSRI. It's like, yeah, but how do you know that that's going to be with no objective data? Oh, well, it's just a protocol. Okay, well, and that's, I think that the theme of this chat has been your sovereignty, your agency. Like, you're the one that has to determine whether or not you want to be healthy or not. And they are there as your helpers, if you want to call it, your team, that's there to help you get to, and they're experts, like, obviously they're doctors, but they don't get to dictate what happens to you unless like, you're on a gurney and you're freaking dying. But when you go into their office, it's like, hey, I'm feeling this, but I want to get to here. Can we have that consultation? Can we move forward? And I love that you're showing that other side of the coin that, man, like you can go on it, but like there's definitely a way forward that doesn't require it. But everybody goes on their own journey and goes on their own path. So I think that's a really powerful message moving forward for myself. Like I don't know if TRT is the answer, and because I have yet to go to, let's say, the next step with a clinic that actually specializes in this. Because right now it's just my GP. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I need to know way more in terms of numbers, in terms of data. Because if it is a primary issue, cool, easy enough. But if it's a secondary one, that is my suspicion. And that's why I'm looking. I also got my heavy metals tested. I'm still waiting on those results. You talked about parasites. I've got the vials literally over here. Poop in a jar. I'm doing all that because I know something's not optimized. And I don't just want to go against what I recommend and what I preach all the time is like know the fundamental reasons, because then I'd be just doing exactly what everybody else does. And that's just jab myself because my testosterone's low. No, why is it low? Because I want to fundamentally fix it. So we covered a lot of ground here, Anthony. A lot of ground, my friend. So before we wrap up this conversation, because we're going to do more. We're going to do more. We've already agreed that I think that's
We at least have 2 more parts.
Yeah, exactly. At least 2 more parts. Like we're like, okay, let's talk about testosterone. So anyways, my religious beliefs are say, all right, we really went deep. What or how can folks get some more insights? Because you've done kind of like is it safe to say a rebrand? Sounds very marketing lingo-ish, but what do you got on like the back burner? What do you got going so folks can like truly get more insights? Because you're obviously a smart guy that's got a lot of insights into health, fitness, and all things, like even if you want to call it esoteric, that guys can get a lot of value from. Where can folks find you? What's where are your next steps moving forward?
I appreciate that. Yeah, so when we had the Stoned Apes podcast, we had a guest called Father Mark, and he was a 30 or 40-year Catholic priest, and everybody knows him as the clairvoyant priest. And he was such an interesting character when he came on the show, and he really intrigued me because, we're a little rough around the edges, as your audience has probably noticed with my constant cursing. I'm not the most PC person in the world, but he accepted us and he welcomed us with open arms, and he truly did love us, and he really loved what we were doing. And in many, many ways, our belief structure is not all that different. And, I call myself a savage pagan. Definitely am. In a lot of ways, and I even refer to myself as a magician because those are things that I believe in. So, even in ancient Christianity, they had the old magi, and when he refers to me and he understands my belief structure and the way of living, he actually says that I remind him a lot of the ancient esoteric works that he read on the magi, and that my belief structure fits pretty well into that. And so we decided to come together on a podcast because we're also working together in real life. He's retired from being a priest, and so he doesn't have a parish anymore. He is working with a Catholic organization doing these retreat style or outreach style services from so many different areas, but essentially they have centers in 3 states, one in Phoenix, one in Kansas City, and one in Austin. And they're meeting people in all different walks of life. And he brought me in because originally he's like, I got these people that need things. And it's like, I don't know anything about plant medicine. Like, I believe in it. I know it works. You've convinced me, but I need some place to send people to. And I was like, okay, well, you send them my way. I'll hook them up, And so we started to get together in that space where I could really help people with things that he didn't have any reference with, such as like pornography addictions and things like that. So we decided to come together and reboot the podcast, and we're going to start a podcast called the Stoned Priest Podcast.
Oh, cool.
And it's basically going to be me and a clairvoyant Catholic priest and myself as a pagan magician, giving so much advice in so many different places, sometimes just fun exploring of crazy esoteric concepts and ideas. And, we're going to talk aliens and wormholes and quantum science.
Yes.
But in other spaces, it really is going to be about what I feel might be missing in this spiritual awakening space is how do we apply these things to our day-to-day life? And I want to bring the podcast in a Socratic way to create critical thinking in the audience and then provide people with like, okay, here's this concept that we've talked about, but here are things that you can actually do in your day-to-day life. Maybe here's some practical ways to implement meditation. Maybe here's some practical ways to implement journaling. Here are how journaling impacts not only your mental and psychological health, but also has to do with your spiritual connection and your intention and creation and things of that nature. And oh, by the way, on a quantum science level, like I can explain to you the molecular energy that goes behind that and why that's important, what you might actually be doing. And from a biological level, what's happening in your body right now? How are the things that's with your body impacting your quantum energy? And how is that impacting your overall state of mental health and your overall state of being? And so that is the premise of the podcast that we're going to be shooting together. It's just going to be kind of a catch-all, but you're going to get this. Definitely, Father Mark is 100% a Catholic priest, and he does believe in Christianity, even though he has a lot of clairvoyant abilities, I believe, and a lot of awareness outside of the scope of what's taught in the Bible. And then I am definitely what you would refer to as an esoterist. I have a different way of practicing my beliefs, but I also think that that's something that the world is missing. Is we all of a sudden thought that it's got to be my way or the highway, and it's not the case. It's like me and Father Mark we can find common ground, and we can learn from each other, and we can grow from each other, and we can accept the new ideas without completely abandoning our belief system. It's not necessary. We're trying to show people that there are other ways of viewing things and doing things. Can you find yourself to a path of awakened enlightenment being a Christian? Sure, absolutely. Can you do that being a Muslim? Sure, but there's also a lot of traps in there as well. And so that's kind of the premise of the podcast, and hopefully we'll be booting that up here shortly. I have a big move in my life right now, but I'm really hoping to have that on the ground within the next 30 days. We already got the artwork and everything lined up. We got a really cool logo, so I'm excited about it.
Nice. I still have your sticker is on this laptop. Use it right now. It's a badass logo, man, for the Stone Daves podcast. So I'm sure you'll bang out another great
I think
logo.
you might like this one even more.
Okay, sweet. All right, so more to follow on that, and we'll be sharing it here on the Hard to Kill podcast for sure. And that's definitely my jam, man. Whenever I get stoned at night, I immediately go to esoteric-based YouTube videos. That's just, I don't know. I got so many questions. There's just not enough answers. I got to learn more. So it seems like you're going to be a really good conduit for my obsession of the esoteric and the all things mystical. So that's going to be very cool. Can't wait.
We should book like 3 hours for that one.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be a good 3 hours. Yeah, a good 3 hours and a good edible to get through those for sure.
Oh, 100% good high.
So this will be published. So folks that you're listening here, we're publishing this episode like it's late August. So this is likely coming out in early September, but Anthony's also going to be on some live broadcasts as well, which if you guys are unaware and you're listening to this for the first time, like, do you have a live broadcast here? Yes, every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, I go live on YouTube, X, and I believe Facebook. I have to check, but I'm pretty sure I go on live on Facebook as well. And if you want to chime in a less structured type of conversation where you can have your opinions heard and possibly get some responses to some questions, then you can definitely tune in. We have guests like Anthony and all kinds of interesting folks that are doing interesting things in the community to just have a conversation. That's essentially the point. And hash out some subjects and have some fun, talk shit, just really kind of be in our own space and get some shit off of our chest and hear me talk and ramble about some things that are bothering me as well. So Anthony, it's been a real pleasure, man. Like, this was a great conversation, and like, it's not like I'm surprised. It's not like I'm surprised. I'm glad you reached out to me a few weeks ago, man, because this is, I guess we didn't even touch on synchronicities here, but there's energy involved in coming together and having a chat. And there's just that synchronicity that, like, man, I need some guests. I don't know where I'm going with the podcast. And then boom, you chime in like, brother, we need to reconnect. I'm like, hells yeah, man. So thanks so much for sharing your insights and your future plans. And folks, don't forget to like, subscribe, and train hard. Fight easy. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.